The Black Knight satellite is one of those really curious mysteries.
Something's circling above our planet, and it has no business being there. NASA didn't launch it, it's not one of Elon's toys, and it definitely didn't come from the Russians. In fact, this thing was supposedly detected before the very first satellite ever left Earth. It's shown up on radar. Astronauts have seen it.
Astronauts took a picture of some unidentified object in space. Once people saw that picture, they were convinced that it was an alien spacecraft.
Cameras in space have snapped photos of it. Some experts brush it off as space junk.
Black Knight satellite is this object orbiting the Earth. NASA labeled it space junk.
NASA says it's just a thermal blanket, but not everyone's buying that. There's a wild theory that this isn't junk at all, that it's been up there for thousands of years. A mysterious probe, maybe even aliens.
There is something up there, traversing the planet Earth on an orbit, and it's not built by human hand.
Quietly monitoring us since before we had pyramids. The weirdest part? No one knows who put it there or why it's still watching.
I believe that this thing is watching us.
This is the story of the Black Knight satellite, and the deeper you dig, the stranger it gets. So stay with us, because what starts out sounding like sci-fi might just leave you wondering what's really out there. The legend of the Black Knight satellite. Whenever NASA sends rockets or probes into space, they're almost always fitted with cameras that record every twist and turn of our celestial neighborhood. Occasionally, those live feeds reach the public, and it's not rare to spot unidentified specks drifting by. That happens because Earth is wrapped in a halo of space junk, chunks of rock, stray bits of old satellites, and broken equipment that survived re-entry and now circle our planet. Even the tiniest fragment packs a punch at orbital speeds, so NASA keeps an eye on roughly 27,000 known pieces of debris. It's a massive job, and it will only become tougher as more nations and private companies chase the stars. With so much junk up there, it's almost inevitable that one odd object will spark a stir. For UFO fans and curious skywatchers alike, one image stands out. A photograph taken in the early days of the International Space Station. At first glance, it looks like any other shot of floating hardware against the inky backdrop. But some say this grainy snapshot reveals something far more mysterious. The legendary Black Knight satellite. The tale of the Black Knight reaches back more than a century to 1899, when Nikola Tesla, a brilliant Serbian inventor often called a genuine mad scientist thanks to his eccentric behavior and wild ideas, was in the United States chasing his dream of wireless power. A trained electrical engineer, he dazzled the world with experiments that pushed radio waves to their limits. One night, while sending out radio pulses, he heard a precise echo returning seconds later. Too late to be a simple bounce off the moon or Earth. That echo wasn't random static. It was a clear, repeatable signal bouncing back from overhead. Legends say that this radio echo marked humanity's first brush with an artificial watcher orbiting our planet.
He starts to hear signals that are extraterrestrial. These are his words.
According to some versions, this silent observer slipped into Earth's skies around 13,000 years ago, long before any human-made satellite. Tales tie its arrival to ancient myths of sky gods and celestial messengers, hinting that early civilizations might have glimpsed it and woven it into their folklore. Echoes and star maps. In the 1920s, Danish radio engineer Jørgen Hals began noticing something odd during his amateur experiments.
Jørgen Hals in Norway. He documented these long-delayed echoes too, and like Tesla, couldn't find a natural explanation.
He would send out a radio pulse and then, several seconds later, hear the very same signal echoing back. These bizarre repeats became known as long-delayed echoes, or LDEs. No atmospheric layer or mountain reflection could account for delays of 2, 3, or even 5 seconds. Hals's meticulous records showed the echoes weren't random. They were precise, repeatable, and utterly unexplained by any earthbound source. Decades later, in 1973, Scottish science writer Duncan Lunan decided to dig into Hals's data. Lunan gathered the recorded delay times and plotted them in the sequence they'd appeared. To his astonishment, the dots on his graph began to sketch patterns resembling star maps.
Duncan Lunan went back and took another look at this message. Duncan was a member of many and founded astronomical.
He interpreted these diagrams as messages from a probe originating at Epsilon Boötis, also called Isar, a bright star in the northern sky. According to Lunan's calculations, this silent watcher had lurked near the moon for roughly 13,000 years, sending back echoes in a coded galactic language. Despite the excitement his star chart theory generated, Lunan never mentioned the name Black Knight. He spoke only of the Epsilon Boötis hypothesis, an idea that an alien probe hovered unseen above Earth since before recorded history. Other writers later wove Lunan's work into the broader Black Knight legend, borrowing his star maps and adding the famous name to suggest they hailed from an ancient satellite. Another chapter of the mystery surfaced in the early 1950s, at the height of Cold War tensions. Newspapers ran startling reports of an unknown satellite orbiting Earth, despite neither the US nor the Soviet Union possessing the technology to launch one at the time. These articles hinted that famed astronomer Clyde Tombaugh, discoverer of Pluto, had spotted something strange through his telescope. In truth, those snippets were brief summaries of a UFO book by Donald Keyhoe. Keyhoe's talent for blending fact, rumor, and military secrecy had led readers to believe an official discovery had taken place.
A gentleman known as Donald Keyhoe, and he was a very well-known UFO investigator, ex-military.
Even though no formal findings ever emerged from Tombaugh himself. Together, these threads, Hals's LDEs, Lunan's charted echoes, and Keyhoe's Cold War tales, form the backbone of the Black Knight myth. Each strand held its own mysteries. Why did LDEs still defy a simple explanation? Could a science writer really decode alien star charts from delayed radio echoes?
It's something else. And that something else still remains to be seen. If I was an alien race.
And why did so many accounts start calling the object the Black Knight when that name first appeared nowhere in Hals's or Lunan's own reports? Part of the answer lies in the human love of a thrilling story. Beyond the lure of conspiracy and hidden probes, some facts remain solid. NASA still tracks around 27,000 pieces of space debris, cataloging everything from defunct satellites to fragments of rocket bodies. Long-delayed echoes continue to puzzle radio scientists, documented by engineers who still debate their cause. And Duncan Lunan's charts, published for anyone to examine, stand as testimony to the unexpected patterns one can find when looking at raw data. The legend of a 13,000-year-old satellite may rest on shaky foundations, but its ingredients, mysterious signals, half-forgotten theories, and a few compelling images, resonate deeply. Polar orbit, public panic. A few years later, Hal's observations, the Black Knight legend resurfaced in headlines from American newspapers. In 1960, reports spoke of an unusual satellite moving in a polar orbit, an orbit that swings over both the North and South poles, giving a clear view of every corner of the planet. By then, both the United States and the Soviet Union had launched satellites, but all of theirs stayed near the equator. A polar orbiting object that neither superpower would own sounded like something out of a spy novel or a sci-fi movie. The timing couldn't have been more charged. The world was tense, with both sides locked in a deadly game of brinkmanship. Less than 3 years later, the Cuban Missile Crisis would nearly push Earth into nuclear war.
Looking for something that might pertain to nuclear threats and on.
Against that backdrop, an unclaimed satellite spying on the globe suggested secrets piled on top of secrets. Yet decades later, declassified documents revealed a far more mundane truth. The mysterious object was part of America's secret Corona program. Officially called the Discoverer Research Satellite Series, Corona was a black op project meant to take spy photos of Soviet military sites.
Maybe a slight second mission to the program, and that was using photographic equipment that he had.
To keep its true purpose hidden, the U.S. Air Force pretended it was a harmless scientific mission. Discoverer 8, launched in November 1959, carried a bucket, a film recovery capsule designed to fall back to Earth once the satellite completed its photographic run. However, Discoverer 8's orbit was more eccentric than planned, making it impossible to catch the bucket in midair. The capsule was jettisoned, drifted alone in space, and eventually burned up on re-entry in March 1960, along with parts of the satellite itself. This stray bucket and its fragments likely drifted in a polar path, matching newspaper descriptions of a polar orbiting mystery object. Unplanned plot twists like these were bound to spark wild theories, especially when national security was hanging by a thread and rumors of alien watchers were already in the air. Back then, the public didn't know Corona existed, so the odd debris became fuel for the Black Knight fire. Fast forward to the early days of human spaceflight, and another famous name enters the story. A Project Mercury astronaut, Cooper flew into orbit in 1963 aboard Faith 7. He was known for his honesty and for openly admitting he'd seen unexplained lights in the sky. Naturally, when the Black Knight myth took off, people pointed to Cooper as proof that a real alien satellite was circling Earth. Tales spread that he had spotted green lights, supposedly the Black Knight's sensors, and that ground control radar had caught an extra blip on their screens. The dramatic version of Cooper's story, with its green flashes and radar ghosts, became a staple of UFO lore. Yet Cooper's own flight transcripts tell a different tale. During his Mercury mission, he reported no such sightings while in orbit. The transcript makes no mention of green lights or unknown radar targets. Once someone of Cooper's stature admits a UFO sighting on Earth, later claims about space can stick more easily, even if they don't line up with official records. By weaving together these episodes, the Discoverer 8 debris floating off course, Cooper's UFO fame, and the hot-wired atmosphere of the Cold War, the Black Knight myth grew into something that felt historically rich and strangely plausible. Each piece of the puzzle came from real events or real people. The Jettison bucket really happened. Jürgen Howells really recorded long-delayed echoes, and Duncan Lunan really plotted them into star chart shapes. But stitching those facts together to form a 13,000-year-old alien satellite required a leap into storytelling. That leap is part of what makes the Black Knight so captivating. There's a solid core of truth: secret spy programs, mysterious radio echoes, grainy photos of odd shapes drifting past space stations. NASA's blanket or Black Knight? The most recent and most talked about piece of evidence for something truly otherworldly in orbit comes from 1998. During mission STS-88, the Space Shuttle Endeavour was ferrying the first U.S. module to the new International Space Station. As the crew floated outside on an EVA, one of the shuttle's cameras snapped a series of images showing a dark, oddly shaped object drifting just beyond their workspace.
They quickly take photographs of the oddly shaped object, but its dark color makes it difficult to identify.
NASA's response was quick and simple. It was just a thermal blanket. One of the astronauts had supposedly lost it while fitting insulation panels on the station. Blankets like that are made of thin mylar or similar material and are used to regulate temperature in space. They're lightweight, and if one floats free at roughly 400 kilometers above Earth, it can stay up there for years, slowly circling the planet along with thousands of other fragments. Yet for many observers, the shape in the photos didn't look like a crumpled sheet of foil. Instead, it appeared to have crisp edges and straight lines, almost like someone had folded it into a box or panel. Some analysts claim to see what looked like symmetrical screens, or even small antenna-like bumps. In a sequence of shots taken minutes apart, the object didn't tumble randomly, as debris usually does. It seemed to rotate with purpose, adjusting its angle as if tracking something below. A closer look at the lighting only deepened the puzzle. Most bits of old metal or insulation reflect sunlight brightly, flashing white in photographs. This object, however, absorbed light, appearing almost pitch black against the blue curve of Earth. And when experts estimated its size, based on how far it sat from the shuttle, many concluded it was far too large to be a simple blanket. A typical thermal cover measures just a few square meters. This thing looked closer to the size of a small car. Then there's the question of why it was never retrieved. Orbital debris poses a real danger. Even a paint flake-sized fragment can pierce a spacesuit or damage delicate instruments at orbital speeds of around 28,000 kilometers per hour. NASA spent decades and millions of dollars to design grappling tools and nets for capturing stray objects. And yet, after those photos were sent down, the blanket was left alone, either ignored or avoided by subsequent shuttle and station crews. Some researchers compared the object's orbital path to earlier sightings. It traced a near-polar path, much like the mysterious reports from the 1960 Polar Orbit satellite in the radar blips that seemed to circle high above. Was it mere coincidence that this shape showed up in the same belt of sky where the Black Knight had supposedly lurked for millennia? Or was someone, perhaps NASA itself, letting hunters glimpse it now and then, like a wink from a silent watcher. From there, the story branched out in every direction. Conspiracy theorists argued that NASA knew exactly what the object was and had orders to conceal its true identity. Whistleblower tales emerged, suggesting the US government had filed the Black Knight under the highest secrecy codes. Even Carl Sagan's name got dragged in. Rumors swirled that the famed astronomer and skeptic had come across forbidden files at NASA's archives, only to brush them off in public while cautioning his peers in private. Though no memoir or official statement confirmed those whispers, they fueled late-night discussions and internet forums for years afterward. Through it all, NASA has stuck to its line: a simple mistake, a thermal blanket lost during a routine spacewalk. No alien probe, no ancient watcher, just another piece of space junk hurtling around until the atmosphere finally drags it home. Yet those haunting photos, the black monolith floating over Earth's curve, continue to spark wonder and debate. Speculations and shadows. If the Black Knight really drifts overhead, the first question is obvious. Who put it there? One idea points straight to an ancient alien civilization, being so advanced that they seeded this silent sentinel long before humans ever looked skyward. Imagine a star-faring race sending out automated probes to watch for life blooming on other worlds. Earth, in its early days, would have been a perfect candidate. Swirling seas, creeping plants, creatures learning to breathe air. A Bracewell probe, as some scientists call it, would stay hidden until it picked up the faintest whisper of radio chatter or the glow of city lights. Then it would come alive, quietly observing or perhaps even replying. The Black Knight could be such a machine, patient, motionless in its polar patrol, waiting for the right moment to confirm it had found intelligent company. That theory taps into a deep curiosity, the idea that we're not alone, and that someone somewhere has been keeping tabs on us for ages. Bracewell probes are purely theoretical, sketched out in papers rather than built in workshops. Yet they fit the Black Knight story like a glove. Such a probe wouldn't need fuel or regular maintenance. Wrapped in durable alloys and powered by long-life batteries or even tiny nuclear reactors, it could circle Earth for thousands of years without a hitch. Its purpose? To record everything. The rise of languages, the spread of agriculture, the turning of empires. And when the time was right, to reach out. But there's another camp that insists the Black Knight is no visitor from afar. Instead, they argue, it's a relic of Earth's own lost chapter. Proof that humanity once reached greater heights than history shows. Tales of Atlantis, Lemuria, or the Anunnaki have captured imaginations for centuries. Legends say these ancient peoples mastered technologies that would baffle modern engineers. Could one of their creations have survived the ages in orbit, far from wars, floods, and the slow decay of time? A lone artifact, set on a polar path to watch over Earth's shifting landscapes, might have been their way of ensuring a record of their achievements long after they vanished. This homegrown civilization theory leans on mysterious hints, pyramid alignments, monuments echoing star maps, folklore about sky gods raining fire in swift vehicles. If an ancient high-tech society existed, a silent satellite could be their last monument, a cosmic lighthouse signaling their once bold reach. Over millennia, as cities crumbled and knowledge slipped beneath desert sands, the satellite would be the sole witness, tracing its steady orbit above. Yet some versions of the story take an even darker turn. What if the Black Knight isn't a watchtower but a prison? A mechanical tomb constructed to trap a dangerous entity or technology far from any living world? Like a cosmic Pandora's box, locked away so its secrets could never be used, or so its horrors could never be unleashed. Imagine an ancient civilization discovering a power too wild to control. Their answer: send it into the void, clamp it within a robot shell, and cast it into a lonely orbit. Over the ages, the machine's purpose becomes twisted into myth, and its true payload remains hidden behind layers of rumor. Then there's the Whisper Network. People who claim the Black Knight has been active, sending bursts of radio noise where there should be silence. Math-minded enthusiasts report finding prime number sequences embedded in static, or brief chirps that repeat after exact intervals. Some think those signals are attempts at contact, maybe test pings or coded status reports. Others dismiss them as overloaded ham radio frequencies or simple interference. But for true believers, every odd blip is another piece of the puzzle, hinting that the satellite isn't dead metal, but a living node in a vast unseen network. What makes all these theories magnetic is the blend of known facts and unexplained quirks. The Black Knight's polar orbit mirrors the path of early spy satellites and debris from secret missions. Its odd shape in that 1998 photo looks nothing like standard space hardware. And those long-delayed echoes from Jürgen Hall's experiments still resist a simple atmospheric answer. Tie those threads together, and it's easy to imagine something ancient, something hidden, something quietly keeping track of Earth's story. Of course, every theory has its skeptics. Engineers point out that a free-floating object with sharp edges and black surfaces could simply be a chunk of multi-layer insulation, folded and warped by micrometeoroid impacts. Historians note that Atlantis and Lemuria remain in the realm of myth, with no solid evidence of high-tech societies in Earth's distant past. Radio scientists argue that most mysterious signals vanish under close analysis, explained away by atmospheric quirks or human error. Still, the questions endure. If the Black Knight was placed by aliens, why hasn't it responded openly to modern signals? If it's an Earth relic, why did ancient builders rely on it instead of obvious monuments? If it's a prison, what or who is inside? And if it's simply junk, how did a misplaced insulation blanket or capsule fragment become the stuff of legend? Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. In the silent void above our trembling blue planet, an ancient whisper stirred the instruments of orbiting observatories. The Black Knight satellite, Earth's 13,000-year-old alien visitor. No human hand had shaped its dark hull, yet it trailed our world with relentless purpose. Dr. Vanessa Banks first spotted its eerie silhouette against the starfield, marveling at the crisp geometry that defied natural formation. Each pass brought new mysteries, cryptic pulses in a language lost to time, subspace distortions hinting at impossible speeds, and fleeting visions of ink-black oceans on distant worlds. As news of the anomaly leaked, conspiracy theorists danced with delight while governments scrambled to explain the unexplainable. Deep in a hidden desert bunker, Banks and her team decoded a fragment of signal, an invitation or warning no one could tell. When she pressed play, the room fell into stunned silence as the satellite's voice, ancient yet urgent, echoed through the speakers. With telescopes turning skyward and hearts pounding, every scientist wondered, was this silent sentinel a benevolent guide, a cosmic archivist, or a harbinger of something far darker? What truth lies hidden in its 13,000-year vigil above us? The real story behind the Black Knight. Circling back to Tesla and Hall's, a straightforward answer may lie in the stars themselves. What both pioneers picked up instead of alien signals were likely pulsars, tiny but massively dense remnants of exploded stars. When a massive star reaches the end of its life, it can collapse into a neutron star, packing more mass than the sun into a sphere barely 20 kilometers across. As these neutron stars spin, sometimes hundreds of times per second, their intense magnetic fields sweep beams of radiation across space like lighthouse beacons. On Earth, those beams arrive as perfectly timed radio pulses. Astronomers only identified pulsars in 1967, well after Tesla's 1899 radio work and Hall's 1920s echoes, so early listeners had no idea what they were hearing. Once pulsars were understood, the mystery of delayed echoes melted away. Those precise repeats weren't reflections at all, but naturally timed bursts from distant dying stars. As for the curious satellite seen by Endeavour's crew during the STS-88 mission in 1999, NASA's answer was equally down to earth. Officials classified the object as a runaway thermal blanket or a stray fragment of insulation. In low Earth orbit, about 400 kilometers up, space debris is the norm, and hunks of torn-up gear can look like anything from a flat sheet to a rigid box, depending on how light and shadows play across them. Simple bits of debris can take on unearthly shapes when viewed through a camera lens in microgravity. Respected space reporter James Oberg dug into the details and provided solid support for NASA's view. He explained that the crew was fitting a protective blanket called multi-layer insulation to a new node module. That insulation keeps delicate instruments from overheating in direct sunlight. During the spacewalk, one of those blankets floated away, unseen at first by ground teams. Once the images hit the news, Oberg pointed out that the timing and orbit of the object lined up perfectly with that lost insulation panel. Even the astronauts' chatter backs up the blanket story. While working outside, the commander asked the spacewalker where the thermal cover had gone. noting it must have slipped free of its tether. The spacewalker sounded surprised, wondering how it could have broken loose. Later, one of them remarked that odd sightings in orbit were fun to talk about, but that chasing conspiracy theories was a poor use of valuable time and brainpower. In other words, the people who know the shuttle's routines best shrugged off any idea of a hidden alien satellite. So with pulsars offering a natural fix for those mysterious echoes and clear evidence that STS-88's dark shape was just stray insulation, why hasn't the Black Knight tale faded? For one thing, stories of secret satellites and government cover-ups are hard to kill. Each new twist, whether it's a blurry photo or a decades-old newspaper snippet, gives believers a new spark to rekindle the legend. And the built-in drama of hidden watchers, ancient civilizations, or cosmic prisons taps into a universal thrill. The idea that the universe still holds something completely unexpected. The modern chapter of this saga kicked up again in 2017 when a popular online outlet ran an article claiming video footage showed someone shooting down the Black Knight. The clip featured a bright white orb plummeting through Earth's upper atmosphere, trailing sparks like a meteor. It went viral, with viewers pausing, rewinding, and debating what they'd seen. Was a secret warplane from a shadowy Illuminati squadron responsible? That was the story some jumped to, insisting a hidden aircraft had taken out the satellite in a covert strike. Unsurprisingly, experts and fact-checkers quickly traced the footage to a completely ordinary rocket stage re-entering the atmosphere. No Illuminati jet, no anti-satellite missile, just more space junk burning up in a dazzling display. But by then, the conspiracy wheels were already in motion. Every debunk only added new layers to the lore, as believers pointed to official denials as proof of a deeper secret. Today, the Black Knight remains one of the most enduring space legends, but one can't help but wonder, where did the name Black Knight actually come from? The true story of the Black Knight's name. The name Black Knight probably sprang not from ancient myths or alien legends, but from Cold War rocketry.
Black Knight, Britain's first space rocket, had its cables released and was all set for the takeoff.
Between 1958 and 1965, Britain flew a series of test rockets called Black Knight to prove out warhead designs for its Blue Streak missile. In truth, these rockets weren't cloaked in mystery. They were straightforward research vehicles, each one helping engineers learn how to bring a re-entry payload safely back through Earth's dense atmosphere. Work on the Black Knight began in 1955 at the Royal Aircraft Establishment, where scientists sketched out the basic shape and performance goals. Soon after, British manufacturer Saunders Roe on the Isle of Wight took over the main building tasks. That partnership married cutting-edge research with hands-on engineering, and the results showed it. On September 7th, 1958, the first Black Knight soared off Pad 5 at Woomera, Australia, burning through its fuel and sending its test re-entry body down toward the desert floor. Over the next 7 years, 22 more rockets followed, each flight proving the design's reliability. No major failures ever grounded the program. These simple, single-stage vehicles were small by today's standards, about 10 meters tall and 1 meter across. Yet they packed a punch, reaching high above the atmosphere to give fresh data on how heat shields and payloads behaved at extreme speed and temperature. That information was the key to making the Blue Streak missile work, but it also laid the groundwork for civilian space efforts. After all, any rocket that can protect its cargo from the fiery return through the air could serve as the basis for a satellite launcher. As the Black Knight series wrapped up its final flight in 1965, engineers and planners were already thinking ahead. A clean sheet study looked at boosting the rocket into an intermediate-range ballistic missile, able to deliver a real warhead to distant targets. Other blueprints imagined stretching the single stage into a multi-stage launcher capable of putting small satellites into orbit. One such plan, called Black Prince, would have mated the sturdy Black Knight first stage to an upper stage derived from Blue Streak. Though Black Prince never flew, its sketches and wind tunnel models fed directly into the later Black Arrow program. Black Arrow became Britain's first, and so far only, homegrown satellite launcher. It borrowed engines, structures, and control systems first tested on Black Knight. Between 1969 and 1971, 3 Black Arrows lifted off from Woomera and successfully placed research satellites into orbit. The small vehicles showed that Britain had the skills to reach space on its own, even if the high cost soon led to the program's end. So the lineage is clear. From Black Knight's dozen years of flawless re-entry tests to Black Arrow's brief stint in space, This family of rockets proved Britain could master high-speed flight above and beyond the atmosphere. When the phrase Black Knight satellite floated into the public imagination, spun into tales of ancient alien probes and secret spy machines, it may have echoed that original rocket's name. Yet the real Black Knight was no silent sentinel. It was a workhorse of Cold War research, a stepping stone toward planetary exploration. That down-to-earth history doesn't carry the same allure as a 13,000-year-old alien craft, but it shows how a simple research rocket can spark decades of stories.